Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Jorge Ferraz, publisher of Latino Leaders Magazine here. And I'm very, very happy in this Friday, December the 11th, Friday morning, very energizing morning of a very energizing week. And I am happy to say that we have partnered with the Halftime Institute to do this webinar on some topics and an issue that is very, very important for leaders, which is the well-being and the reflections on our own career. From our story, we know that leaders have disciplines, are the ones who are the creators of culture in corporations, are the ones who make the tough decisions sometimes. Leaders are also the ones who have the vision and roll out the strategy, and all those activities and roles and tasks are sometimes tiring and exhausting, and you need to have some recharging at some point. Being a leader has a toll. We have seen that also in the many interviews that we have, and this toll sometimes comes back and fires back with stress, with many things that sometimes are not good at all. And also, we have the famous concept of the loneliness in the top, which is something that leaders experience, and sometimes it's not good and healthy. So sometimes we need to go to the resources, and this is when leaders need to refresh. So one of these resources and one of these great places and concepts that are out there is the Halftime Institute. And this is why we decided to partner with the Halftime Institute to make this talk, and we are bringing fantastic group of panelists today. And with that, I want to welcome our good friend, Rhonda Kehlbeck. She herself is an alumni of the Institute, and now she plays the role of Vice President for Admissions of the Halftime Institute. And Rhonda will give us a little bit of an introduction and explanation on what is the main concept there. Rhonda, good morning, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for helping us to host this webinar.
You are so welcome. Good morning, and good morning to all the people on the webinar. Yeah, the idea of Halftime actually began with Bob Buford when he wrote one of the best-selling books called Halftime: From Success to Significance. He wrote this over 25 years ago. He actually wrote the book because he was at a point in his life where he really wanted his next season of life to be even better than the first. He had this feeling also that God had more in store for him. Halftime, as he saw it, was kind of this pause in his life in which he could evaluate his past and be intentional about the future. The halftime concept, it's a little hard to envision. It's much easier to understand when you see it in action. So Isabella, we're going to roll the video. I want you to watch this short video. It will definitely give you the big picture.
All right.
How do I keep track of what is next? And how do I prepare for the next 20 years?
Folks get to a certain point in their life, and we like to call smoldering disappointment. Something is missing. Halftime exists.
You can't figure out what God is calling you to do for the second half of your life until you are really sure about who you are as a person.
Halftime focuses on 3 areas: teaching, coaching, connecting.
It brings those 3 things together, breaking it down into smaller components that are achievable so that you can get to the outcome that you're looking for, which is more joy, more impact, and more balance.
There's no greater joy than to see someone really get clarity about what their calling is and make a big impact for the Lord.
Halftime helped me synthesize my God-given gifts so that I could go forward and do what God had prepared me to do all along.
The halftime program was the gate to discover that there was a greater purpose for my talents, for my skills, for my experiences.
You have this whisper, this dormant calling. You've got to make a decision whether you let the music die inside or you step out and potentially leave a legacy that lasts a lifetime.
Yeah, thank you. The Halftime Institute, as you heard, it was really created to give leaders, to help them get clarity on how to use their passions, strengths, and work in a way that brings them joy, impact, and balance. Like you heard in the video, we do this through programs that help people discover their sweet spot. Our programs, like you heard, they incorporate one-on-one coaching, peer feedback, connections, networking. All of this is done with a proven process. But most importantly, our programs are customized for each person because each person is unique, as you will hear with our guests this morning, Carlos and Hugo. Jorge?
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you. And I just want to say that let's present the video again at the end of the webinar so everybody can catch the sound of the beginning that we didn't have sound. So we're going to have it again at the end. But now I want to go to the two fantastic panelists that we have, because what Rhonda was explaining is better understood when you have testimonials from real alumni that have gone through the process, the entire process of what these magnificent and tool that Halftime Institute presents. So I am very happy to have with us Carlos Carpizo. He's a great entrepreneur, a personal friend of mine, which I'm known for a good number of years. And Carlos has been in corporate most of his life on the technical side. I will let him to present and describe more his positions, but he spent a good chunk of years working for a very important technical and artificial intelligence firm called Link America. And then he has done other very, very important endeavors. And now he just has written a book that got just published these days. So congratulations for that, Carlos. And he is a living example of the outcome that you can reach here. And we also have a good friend also, Hugo Cuesta, is partner of Cuesta Campos in Guadalajara, in Mexico City. And Hugo also, had the experience of going through the Halftime Institute. He did it also with his wife. And then from there, they just kind of were reborn in many activities. And Hugo became a very important coach and started doing many other activities that are now fulfilling his professional life and his aspirations. So with that, I will leave first Carlos to talk a little bit about himself, and then start sharing his story, and then we will go to Hugo. Carlos, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Jorge. Good morning, dear fellow panelists, and also good morning to everybody watching here on the live stream or later on the restreaming that you will find. It's an honor for me to be here today. Buenos dias, bienvenidos. And it's also an honor to share my halftime story. Halftime's, it's not only the Institute. Halftime really hits us at different points in time, as you will also learn from Hugo, who wrote a book, very good one, by the way, La crisis de la mitad de la vida, the midlife crisis. So it hits us at different points in time, depending on what we're doing. For me, I had been a corporate executive for a number of years for 2 Fortune 500 companies. And lately I was leading a mid-market company here in Dallas, Texas. And I was really happy, doing my job. It was really fulfilling. However, there was a longing for something else, for something more. And it was clear to me that that happened, and that had started years ago. For me, it was 2006 when I first read a book by Rick Warren, a pastor, The Purpose-Driven Life. And it kind of simmers in the background, right? And I was happy, yet I was not fulfilled. And I was, sort of living the dream of an executive, and yet that inkling was still there. So at some point in time, my hard journey, as I call it, started, fast forwarding. It started accelerating in 2015. And in 2017, I was gifted the book Halftime by Bob Buford. So I took it with me on a family trip, end of year family trip to Tequila, Mexico, so not far from where Hugo is. And as I was reading the book, it was not a book that I could just, read throughout and put down. I was reading pieces of it, and it was making me wonder and ask a lot of questions, right? And to my good fortune, when I came back, I was offered the opportunity to go to a professional development course, and I started evaluating multiple options. And one of them was the Halftime Institute, because it was a nice surprise to me to find out that there's not only the book, which is of great help and has great concepts, but an institute that, as Rhonda explained very clearly, helps you go through all of that with the teaching and coaching and connecting that happens when you join the Fellows program. So after evaluating multiple programs, I decided to go for the Fellows program at the Halftime Institute, mainly because of two things. One, my wife could be part of it. And I think that's very important. You don't want to venture take a path that is going to, make you become a Buddhist monk, and you're going to leave your family behind, right? And two, it was faith-based. And that is very important, no matter what your faith is. For us, it's basically Christian faith, but it doesn't matter what your faith is. That component was very important for me in making the decision. So I joined the Fellows program, and I graduated after 12 very exciting and rewarding months, almost this time last year. And the most important thing is, what have I been doing since? As Rhonda also explained briefly, Halftime Institute helps you with a very well-proven method. Look at your core, meaning who you are, what are you good at, what gifts did God give you that you can use for not only your benefit and that of your family, but for the whole community, right? It gives you the context. You can really analyze whether you want to fulfill that purpose that you will find at the Halftime Institute and clearly define it. Staying on your current organization, joining a new organization, or launching a new organization, right? You have all these options available. And for me, it was launching a new organization. So, I can go through all of what happened, during some very rewarding and thought-provoking times at the Fellows program. Long story short, I left my corporate job, and I started a social venture called Kosmos, where it's a way for me to fulfill my mission to increase economic growth and social inclusion for youth in disadvantaged areas of the US and Mexico. Now, I'm not only doing that, I joined the incubator at SMU, where I did my MBA here in Dallas as part of it. And through that, I became a mentor in residence. So I'm really happy coaching young entrepreneurs and trying to help them avoid going through the exact same mistakes that I went through in a brief stint as an entrepreneur. A lot of times failure gives us a lot of very, very good and wise teachings, right? I've also written a book, which was published just yesterday. So I'm going to switch my background here for a brief moment. So sorry for the commercial, but I'm very proud of being a published author and joining the ranks of Hugo Cuesta here. You can find it on Amazon, And that describes a lot of my journey as well on one of the chapters called Purpose and Faith. The most important thing that I believe is important with the Institute is if you felt that you are sort of a penguin living in a world of flamingos, right? You're a little bit black and white, and you see, people that are pink, and you don't know, what's going on. Once you get to the Halftime Institute, you arrive to a colony of penguins. And to me, that was amazing, right? Because then you start looking around and you go like, wow, there's a lot of people just like me. They're having the same doubts. They're having the same challenges. They're having the main concerns. And regardless of whether you start a new venture, join a nonprofit, or continue working for your business, or continue being on your executive role, all very valid, you're going to have a much more fulfilling way to live your life, your second half, right? We're living longer, and the concept of retirement doesn't exist anymore if you don't want to, right? Who wants to just go and travel or play golf? The important thing is to use all of those talents that we've accumulated as leaders. The more important one, I believe, and the pandemic has shown a bright light on it, is character. Because I'm sure that everybody watching has the capacity to lead, has the commitment to lead, but the character, that's a tough one. And it's being challenged more and more, and will be challenged more and more, particularly with the advances on artificial intelligence and automation, right? So at Halftime, I'm sure you all have that character. It just helps you reinforce it and look at it in the right way to make sure that you will achieve your goals for your second half, which you clearly define going through Halftime, as well as for your family and for your community, for any group that you belong to that's near and dear to your heart. So it's really about joy, right? That's very, very important. Experience joy, not to be confused with happiness. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're not, but we can always be joyful. And impact, and that balance, or as I like to call it, integration, right? Integration between your professional activities, your personal activities, your faith activities. It really touches on all the realms of wealth. Some people say they're 10, at Halftime they tell you they're 7. They really just match very well with each other. And I don't know how we're doing on time. I don't want to not leave enough time for Hugo, which has a much more relevant and interesting experience than mine. So Hugo, I'm going to turn it over to you if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're fine on time. Don't worry, Carlos. But Hugo, please go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you, Jorge, Rhonda, Carlos. It's really a pleasure. I'm excited to be with you to reflect today together about the life-changing concept of halftime. And I'm going to try to summarize a very intense 3-year midlife crisis in the next 10 minutes. And so I'll jump right. I'll tell you that it all started on December the 14th, and that 14th has been an extraordinary year of me, full of personal and professional satisfactions. But I was completely burned out. I mean, my last 10 years have been under a very hectic schedule, jumping from one meeting to the other as a corporate lawyer. I mean, I'm kind of an overachiever guy, and I'm sure that this situation is very similar to many of you. But for some reason, I felt apathic. I felt distant. I believe I was under some sort of a depression. Because I suddenly lost interest on my projects, lost interest in my surroundings, and I shared this with my family and friends, trying to explain how I felt. Obviously, they didn't understand it because I didn't understand it. So I was very confused. The only clue I had at that time is that I was turning 50, and that I knew that it was having an impact on me and in my life. But what I felt very clearly is that whatever I had done or achieved in my life just wasn't enough. I mean, my feeling was that there's got to be something else. And this feeling was very clear when, we all dream, as corporate lawyers, we all dream of an iconic transaction of multinational companies merging, you know, all the deals that you see on the news and stuff. And that's exactly what happened to me in 2015. I mean, one of our largest clients, Daimler Mercedes, they did a huge joint venture with Renault Nissan, which took 2 years of our team of full immersion, working very long hours, telephone calls in the middle of the night, trips across the ocean when traveling was an option. Now we all miss traveling. And I thought that at closing, I would feel completely satisfied, happy, and ecstatic. And none of that happened. I mean, the satisfaction lasted pretty much a day or less. And then I discovered myself on the next deal. So my question then was, is this worth it? I mean, is it worth to live a life like this, that whenever the iconic transaction you've been dreaming of comes on and goes off without anything in particular? I mean, it doesn't leave the level of satisfaction that you expected. But in the middle of this situation, for some reason, and this is, God's ways, that's the way I call it, I flew to Atlanta to a board meeting where I was appointed international vice chair of Meritas law firms worldwide, which is a very prestigious position, a position that no Latin America has ever occupied in the history of the organization. And after that, we went to the lobby to celebrate, the meeting. And one of my good friends from South Carolina, he pulled me over and said, "Hugo, are you okay? I mean, you just seem distant, you seem distracted, you're just different." And I'm not the kind of person who jumps at sharing my personal stories with everyone, but this is a good friend. And I sat him at the bar and I said, "You have to listen to me, Bill. This is going on. This is how I feel." And after an hour of patient, listening of him, he looked at me and said, "Hugo, come on, you're making a big deal of this. You're just going through your halftime. I mean, we all go through that." I said, "What? Halftime? What is halftime? Why have I not heard of this concept?" And he started explaining to me what Rhonda just explained, and it made a lot of sense. And then he said, "Look, an old friend of mine, Bob Buford, wrote a book which is called Halftime. Just go and read it. Don't make a big mess out of it. And I'm sure that you will find there many of the answers that you're looking for." He just drank his last sip of bourbon on the bar. He left, and he left me completely shocked, because that was my first contact with the concept of halftime. Obviously, I read the book in 2 days, and it was very strange because I felt like if Buford had some sort of cameras in my office or in my home, because he knew exactly what was going on. And I said, this is what's going on. And that's where I learned about the Halftime Institute. I registered the next day. And actually, it has been a blessing in my life to be part of the institute. It is truly a life changer, and it's a very professional approach to this concept, and it's a holistic approach. It approaches the personal, the finance, the family, the professional, and the spiritual approach, which to me was very important, because as a deep-rooted Catholic, to me, I wanted to make sure that whatever decision I was taking in life was aligned with God's calling for me. I wanted to make sure that I didn't take decisions of my own, that this was, well reflected. And obviously this experience was followed by other spiritual retreats, a lot of weekends in solitude. I did the St. Jack's pilgrimage for 2 weeks on my own. I mean, trying to, put together ideas and stuff. I mean, to summarize it, the crisis lasted like 3 years, pretty much 3 years. And then a halftime coach helped me to draft a very important document, which is the second half mission life statement, which is, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And that's exactly what Carlos was saying. So I became kind of obsessed with the concept. I shared it with the principals at IPADE Business School, which is, as you know, one of the most prestigious business schools in Mexico and in Latin America. I shared the concept with them, and I shared my personal experience, and they said, "You know what, you need to write your case, and this will be a case study for the MBA." And it became a case study for the MBA, which I've been teaching since then for the MBA leaders at the business school. And after seeing the impact that this concept was having on people's life, I started to talk about it, to write about it with a more Hispanic Latino approach, which I knew that it was having more of an impact and understanding on the Mexican community, at least. And I knew that at one point in time, I needed to share my frustrations, my pain, my fears and everything. And I was pushed to write a book, which is a book that is called La Crisis de la Mitad de la Vida. It's also available in Amazon. It has had a significant impact. I sent it to Penguin Random House, which is, as you know, one of the largest editor companies. The CEO wrote it. He was in his midlife crisis when he read it. So he called me and said, Hugo, I want to publish this. I want to publish this. There's so little written in Spanish and in Latin America about this that we need to publish this. And boom, 3 months later, it was on most of the libraries in Mexico and on Amazon and stuff. So what I want to summarize is that this is a life-changing concept that is not, it's not a miracle process. I mean, I have made some progress in some areas. I have failed dramatically in other areas, but I'm convinced that all human beings, we're always work in progress. I mean, we all, the attitude of learning, the attitude of evaluating and reflecting, which is what we're doing today, it's really a blessing. So even though I feel that I'm still very far from the person I want to become, I have to admit that thanks to the Halftime Institute and the Halftime concept, I'm much closer to the person I want to become, and much closer to the lifelong purpose and goal that I identified in my midlife crisis, which is, as Bob Buford puts it, my one thing, which is my epitaph, which is what I want to see in my grave. And it is, I want to see in my grave the following words: Hugo learned to love and to live in peace. Back to you, Jorge.
Well, that is a very profound thought. And I'm sure not many of us are thinking on what do we want in our epitaph at our graves. But certainly, you know, one of the main questions that we do when we interview leaders in our magazines is, how would you like to be remembered? And that is kind of close to this. One thing that I found very similar to what you are explaining in this concept of the Halftime Institute is that usually the life of people, especially life of leaders, whose lives are, you know, are more impactful to others, not only to their own life and their own environment and circle, but we're talking about people like you two that have been leaders in their own corporations and perhaps have been impacting lives of others at a very, you know, high number maybe. And one thing that we see in common is that the life of the leader has like stages, and many people are intelligent enough to find that way of closing stage 1 and opening stage 2. And closing stage 2 and opening stage 3. And what Carlos was saying about we're living in a time in which maybe retirement is not longer that attractive because we are living longer and we are living healthier than before. So when you are 70, doesn't mean that you are about to die, right? You still have like maybe 20, 25 years in front of you to do things. And that's an eternity for many people. So I think this is a very interesting concept for those who are like you two, trying to find some meaning and also some living a legacy, like Hugo just mentioned. Rhonda, would you explain to us a little bit on what is the, once you enroll in the programs, what is usually the toll, not the toll, but the sacrifices or the work that all those individuals have to do, and the process? No, I wouldn't like to call it sacrifices, because maybe something that they enjoy is not a sacrifice. Maybe it's a process that is very joyful. But what is that process? So that I'm sure is time commitment and concepts that are different to or difficult sometimes to think, right?
Definitely. Well, the process really starts with me as the Vice President of Admissions. I have the privilege, I get to talk to every person who's thinking about our programs. And so I have a conversation with the person, really try and get to know them, what they're feeling, what they're hoping for, if they've been coached before, all of those things. And I help them then connect with a coach, that they get to have an exploratory conversation with the coach to see if that's a good fit. Finding the right coach for this process is critical. And so my number one goal is to get to know the person well enough that I can match them, help them match with a great coach. Once they have a coach, then they decide which program fits them best. So we have one-on-one coaching, which is where they would work just one-on-one with a coach every single month. They can choose how many sessions of coaching they want or need. And then another program that we have is called the Fellows Program. And that is what Carlos just finished. And that's a 12-month program, but you're in a cohort. So you're in a small group of no more 8 to 10 like-minded thinkers and believers. And you go through the process with your own coach, but also in the presence of this kind of cohort. So you get peer feedback. Another program we have is Dream Together, and that's just a 2-day event for couples. And Hugo and his wife came to that in Dallas as well. And so the process really is customized completely for each person. I help you figure out which program fits you best, what's the best coach for you, and then you can determine the pace and intensity of that. So if you're in the Fellows Program, we usually say the commitment is about a round of golf per month is the time commitment on that. And the one-on-one coaching, that time commitment is your call with a coach each month, and then however much more you want to put into it. So it's really customized for every person.
Now, we all have been living probably one of the most difficult years in our lives and story. And many people have taken it in different ways. For some people have had a big toll, especially in maybe job losses and declining of businesses or things like that, and that affect our income, our job, our development, our career advancement, but also the emotional toll that we all have played with all these news and the perception that we're living in a pandemic in which something can get and maybe kill us, or we can transmit that and kill others, and all the reports in the media on the everyday cases of infections and deaths and all that. You know, for 9 months, it seems that it's overwhelming for many people. And many of them are taking this year to say, enough is enough. I need to do something else. I need to reinvent myself. I need to do something different with my life. I need to do, something that is going to, lead me to something different from what I was doing. So I would say this is a perfect year or we have the perfect storm, if you will, to be able to have some of these decisions, right? Now, I want to go back to Carlos, reflecting on this, Carlos. What would you recommend to people that are what are the initial, because I can see that you both, from your stories, you share something that many leaders have in the course of their development, which is that constant insatisfaction with what they are doing, that permanent lack of satisfaction. They want to do more, they want to do bigger, they want to do farther, and you both experimented that before joining the programs of the Halftime Institute. So what are the signs that we should find in our own lives, Carlos, according to you and your experience, to be able, and what are the initial actions that we need to take on that?
Thank you, Jorge, and that's a very good question. So if you like what you do, or even if you like what you do, right, and going through the strategic planning cycles, looking 3 to 5 years, and then the annual review of goals, and you're reaching your goals, and you're looking at your bank account and you go like, wow, this has been a good year, and what am I gonna buy next, or where am I going to go on vacation next? And I mean, that's great, but it's really, if you have that inkling, as I mentioned, where you go like, well, this is great, but why am I doing this, right? What's next? Then that's the cue, right? Or if you have an accident, or if you go through divorce, or if you have problems with your children or with your young adults, there's a lot of things that can, really detonate you trying to find what's next. And then when you start thinking about, what do I want to leave as a legacy, or am I even significant? That to me is the cue to start looking something else. So read Hugo's book, La crisis de la mitad de la vida, or read the Halftime book, right? And from there, start really putting your thoughts together. Involve your family, involve your friends. Ask them, what am I good at? What has been, something that I've excelled at? Because we all excel at something. I've already seen a question here that says, does the course work involve the development of emotional intelligence? Yes, but know that we all have emotional intelligence. We're born with it. It's God-given, or a higher being gives it to us. It's just that we tend to suppress it, to hide those emotions. Why? Because we're so focused on achieving, right? On meeting the expectations of others, that we kind of let dust accumulate on top of it for a number of years. And once you realize that, then you start undusting, right? And then you start looking back, and as they say in the Institute, it's more of archaeology type work than anything else. Look back. What is it that you have enjoyed the most? And then once you uncover that, the Institute is very good at helping you define your roadmap, your mission. That one thing that Hugo was mentioning, and that Rhonda has alluded to, what is it that you want to do that is going to be really meaningful to you and to others, to your business, to your community, to your family, right? And
Okay.
it's not easy to find, but I love the method of the Halftime Institute, because that really helps you have it very clear and then pursue it. And if you're a woman or a man of faith, then it's really life-changing, because you know that you have an army behind you that's going to be helping you achieve that, right? And that's not to say that you're not gonna face a lot of tests and challenges and tribulations. That's part of it. You cannot get to significance if you don't surrender. And at least in my personal case, it's been painful. I'm not gonna lie to you, right? That surrender has been painful for a lot of reasons, and one of them being, I used to be driven by the head, and letting your heart drive at first is very uncomfortable, right? But then you grow used to it, and when you start looking at all of what happens, it's just amazing, because we cannot connect the dots looking forward as much as we want to, and God knows we try, especially as executives, right? Or as business leaders. It's really looking back when you can connect the dots. And again, sorry for the commercial, buy my book. That'll show you how now I can connect the dots, and I see a lot of these diosidencias that have happened in my life. And that's a word I learned from Hugo. He doesn't have a trademark, so that's why I used it. But there's a lot of diosidencias that happen, right? The mix between the words God and coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I answered your question. I didn't ramble too much, Jorge.
No, that's fine. And Carlos, would you mind changing your background again to show your book, and so people can get familiar with the cover and the name and all that. And now for Hugo, in our experience also, we have seen, and studies demonstrate, that one of the main factors for happiness, for big moments of happiness in life, is that you do what you like, right? That you wake up every morning and you are enthusiastic, and you are motivated, and you are happy to go to work because you enjoy what you're doing, you enjoy your role. I mean, that doesn't mean that you are like in a party or something, but it's something that fulfills you and So what is your experience? What happened to you after the process that you went through, and what do you recommend for to others to achieve that kind of level, or that kind of thought and joy in their careers and their professions?
That's a very good question, Jorge. And let me share probably two stories that will illustrate the question you're asking. I mean, in terms of, in my view, happiness is fulfilling the mission you were born for, basically. I mean, to the extent you get close to it, that's, in my view, the level of joy that you will experience in your life, because you're living with a purpose. That's one thing. That doesn't, the level of satisfaction that comes from the profession, for example, I still love my profession. One of the takes that I have taken out of this halftime crisis is that I'm still working, pretty much full-time, but less hours because I devote to other projects, as I will tell you. But I'm concentrated on doing what I do best, but I do delegate the rest. I choose my battles more wisely. I choose the battles that not only I do best, but that provide more satisfaction and more fulfillment for me from the professional standpoint. That's one side of it. And I give you an example. For example, after my halftime crisis, I was invited to be part of the Mexican negotiation team for the negotiation of USMCA, which was a 15-month process, which I wouldn't have said yes without having gone through my midlife crisis, because I was in my comfort zone. Everything was fine. Why change? But I knew that I needed to push myself to other limits, to feel uncomfortable, to invest more times of travel, which was my complaint, more time on studying, dealing with politicians. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, but they're not my favorite people. I have to admit it. And I was pushed to do that, to push my limits. And the level of satisfaction I have that is not reflected on your bank account, because this is pro bono. But professionally, I mean, that's something that it's a little contribution that I've made, one of my professional legacies, much more important than any transaction that I do on the firm. On the other side, from the personal side, one of the aspects of my midlife crisis that suffered was my marriage. So I knew at that time I complained that my wife and I could not go to an institution whereby it was a professional, confidential, faith-based, family, pro-family and stuff. And then in my pilgrimage of El Camino de Santiago, I realized that she and I needed to have a thriving marriage first, and to create an organization, to found an organization whereby couples like us could go and get assistance and help and stuff. And we founded an organization called Family Consulting, which been around for 4 years. We have 25 psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists and stuff. And we're helping approximately 500 people a month now. That's very satisfying, Jorge. I mean, those are the kind of things that provide the type of joy that you cannot obtain from money or from travel, as Carlos was saying. I mean, it has been very hard work. I mean, the blessing has been that after a very severe marriage crisis, my wife and I working together on this project, I mean, has reunited us. I mean, we've developed the friendship that ever dreamed. I mean, that doesn't mean that we don't discuss other things, because I mean, we're human beings and that's part of the nature of the relationship. So I'm telling you some examples of how can you obtain fulfillment in areas beyond what you had in mind before going to the midlife crisis.
We have some questions here that have been arriving, and we have a couple of questions that include or want to know more about the involvement of your significant other, your wife, your partner, whatever. And I'm going to read those questions. And one of the questions says, Hugo, how did you include your loved ones in your halftime experience? You already explained a little bit about that. And the other one is about also the wife and the family, and how important is that to transform. Do you have anything else to add to that, Hugo or Carlos?
Yeah, let me share quickly a thought so I let Carlos complete the response. When I was doing the pilgrimage of El Camino de Santiago, for some reason, I read on a wall, another Diosidencia, Carlos, said, I don't know who's the author, but it says, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk together. And that's when I realized that I was walking very fast in life, but I was leaving my loved one behind. And that was not what I meant in my overachievement character and stuff. So at that time, I realized that whatever I needed to do in life, it needed to involve my loved ones. Otherwise, I would not feel joy and satisfaction that I expected.
Carlos, do you want to add something?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes along what Hugo just mentioned, right? Let's be honest. If you're an executive, even if you're a company owner, how often can you go back home and talk to your spouse, significant other, or to your children, right, about work and see excitement on their face? Honestly, they hear you, they listen, but it's not something that is near and dear to their heart, right? Whereas what I found is going through the Halftime Institute and the Thriving Family Retreat and many other activities, you come back home and then you start talking about some of these concepts and they see you struggle with it, and they do pay attention, right? Because it's something that they can relate to, as opposed to your business goals or your metrics and your budget. That's not something that they really care about. When you start talking about these concepts, that's what makes it meaningful. It opens up a can of worms, that's for sure, but it's a good one, because at some point in time you have to deal with it. For example, a great exercise that I found was, what are the family values? I thought we had family values, but doing the exercise with each member of the family, we found out that we had just a couple that were aligned. And then each member of the family has very different family values, and they're all good, right? Because thank God we're all different. But it's those types of things that really make it worth it. Absolutely.
Now, another question that we have that I think is very interesting, because what we were talking with Rhonda before, and the effort of trying to make the Halftime Institute, more interesting and outreach more Latino executives and Latino entrepreneurs here, is to you both. You are both global citizens. You are both Mexicans, and you have established business and professional activities in the U.S. and are going back and forth. What differences did you see between the Latin culture, like for example in Mexico, and the American way of working and career advancing? What are the differences, and where are the challenges and the advantages for each one of them? I don't know if you want to go first, Carlos or Hugo, whatever.
Yeah, Hugo, if you let me go first, because I also see that that's a question that my dear friend Dora Tovar is asking on the chat. Very good question, and there's more similarities than differences between the U.S. culture and the Mexican culture, right? And we complement each other. It's like with the USMCA agreement that Hugo was alluding to. Mexican workers and U.S. workers, we're not fighting, for jobs. We complement each other, because as a region we can be much stronger. So it's the same thing from a culture standpoint. I can tell you that I brought some spice to the group, right? And the group brought a little bit more method and order to me, right? And that's beautiful, because then we really complement each other, and we get to really know people for who they are. There's masks off, right? So there's no pretending at the Halftime Institute, which is awesome. I wish there were a Halftime Institute social media channel, because we're being rolled over by all of these false pretenses in social media, and it was evident with this election in the US and what is happening in Mexico, that they're trying to divide us, polarize us. And no, we have much or many more commonalities than differences at the ground level, who we are as human beings. So that's my take. Now to you, Hugo.
Yeah, that's a great question that I have reflected and meditated over these years. And the way I would summarize it is there's fondo and there's forma. I don't know how to say that in English. Probably you will. The fondo is exactly the same, because our hearts, regardless of your nationality or whatever, they long for more. I mean, we are all born with a mission. We all need to accomplish and to exploit our talents in the good way, invest our talents and identify our passions and do a mix between our passions and our talents. And that's basically where I believe our mission hides. And that's regardless of nationality. I've been asked many times whether this is a concept for rich people, and I said, no, this is a human dilemma that we need to address. And then there's the forma, which is how do we get into that? And that's where I see the differences, because I would say that the North Americans are more structured, more organized, more process oriented and stuff, and the Latinos were more I don't know, probably creative, probably getting to the same result, but through our own way, not necessarily through a linear process. We take a step forward and then a step back. I don't know if I'm explaining myself clearly, but I mean, the summary is the fondo is exactly the same. This is a human dilemma. And the forma, there's many ways of achieving it. But let's not forget, Jorge, that this is an individual calling. We all need to discover it by ourselves. I mean, we all receive very peculiar signals that we are entering the halftime. That's a chapter I devote on my book. How do I know if I'm on halftime? And everybody receives different messages. God has different ways to send those messages, and they're individual to any person.
Yeah, and you're right. I would call it, I don't know if the others will agree, but I will call it the what and the how. No, the what is similar, it's a universal principle, and as you mentioned, is not for different socioeconomical, levels, or educational, or rich or poor, or political or not political. I mean, it's just for everybody. And how is different cultures and different ways are the customizing details, the ornaments at the surrounding. Now, there's coming a very interesting question from Susana Alvarado, and I think maybe Rhonda can help us here, because she has herself being an alumni of the Institute. How about women? I mean, we've been talking, with two gentlemen, Carlos and Hugo, but we haven't thought about applying the principle to women and to executives, female executives, and especially when you have the case that executives, female executives or female leaders have always and usually have both roles, not only being an executive and a successful leader, but also being a mother or a house maker, or wife to someone. So how do you see that? What is your experience with the female side, Rhonda?
Yeah, well, what Hugo said when he said this is kind of a across the board, male and female, wealthy and not wealthy. This is kind of a human experience. We all get to a point in our lives where we were like, gosh, there has to be more, like both of these guys said. The women feel it as well. The difference with them is many of the women, like you said, have done both. They've done work and they've done the taking care of the home and the kids. And so for them, it feels more like trying to go from significance to the next significance. But they definitely have a point in their life where they're like, well, what else could I do? What could I do that I was more passionate about? How can I really pour myself into something that makes an impact and that makes me every day wake up and just go, whew, I could give the rest of my life to this. Women feel that same way, and so do men. So we have quite a few women in our program. Plus, we have some great female coaches that love to work with the women. So you can choose whether you have a male or female coach, but we want more women in the program. I know that they are out there. We would love to reach them as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we have seen when we interview women leaders is that they seem to be happier than men usually. And this is a study that we've been conducting from maybe 25 years now, in which women have better complemented lives. They have whole lives. They are, as I mentioned before, not only they are successful executives, but at the same time they are fulfilling other areas that men doesn't necessarily fulfill. I remember very well when we were interviewing at some point the president of Ford Motor Company in Mexico, and she was breastfeeding her baby at the office, and at the same time, working on things, and she divided herself into the personal, environment or sphere as a mother, and then also as a very important executive. So my question to the three of you, of course, is what would those differences or those special maybe advantages that women would have on this process? Do you see any from your experience, especially you both, Carlos and Hugo, that have worked with your wives in this whole process?
If I might jump in real quick, in the book that I wrote, this one, the CEO of Penguin Random House asked me to write a couple of chapters about women, and I said, well, I mean, this is my personal experience being shared, so I feel weak on that. So what I did is I spoke with my wife, with my sister, and with a number of psychologists who kind of were exposed to this concept. And one of the conclusions is that in our view, women are better equipped to deal with the halftime crisis for a variety of reasons. They are better than men at living the heart journey. We live much more on the mind journey. That's one thing. The resilience of women is much greater than men. I mean, that's at least what we have seen. They are used to share their life stories with friends. We are not. We men are reluctant to admit that we are vulnerable, that we are scared, that we have failed. But women are more open to discuss with their friends on what are their feelings and fears and whatever. And at the end of the day, they are better at coping, in my view, with the professional and the family side, simply because that's how they're wired. I mean, in terms of, they have the privilege of having maternity, obviously not all of them, but that equips them with a very peculiar tool, which we men cannot aspire to have. Never. That's my thought.
I echo that, Rhonda, Hugo, and Jorge. It's emotions, right? Us men, and talk about culture, both sides of the border, and this is more global than not. Men, we're supposed to not show emotions, right? Because we're strong, because we are in the famous Latin word machos, right? We're not. And for me, that has been a journey as well, opening up to feelings, emotions, and actually asking forgiveness to my family for not having shown those emotions, for not having recognized those emotions. I still struggle with that. Why? Because I don't know, that's how I was raised, right? But I think women have an advantage. They're more open to talk about emotions with friends, and sometimes with no friends. I think we need a balance, right? But definitely, let's talk more about emotions and express our feelings. And to a point you were making, Jorge, this year has been really challenging, right? We've all gone through fear, pain, anxiety. We need to recognize that, and we need to talk about it.
And let me just say, I've given a presentation last week called the 2020 a lost year or an opportunity to relaunch your life project. And I'm convinced that one of the benefits of this very painful situation is that this is a great opportunity to reflect on your life and to make changes. There's never been in recent history a situation where we all need to stop, by force, to look down and to reflect on whatever we have done in life. I think that's something that we need to profit from.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100% with all of you, and that's why we were very, very excited about partnering with the Halftime Institute to present these, because I think this is a reflection that every leader needs to make on how are they doing in their lives. Are they satisfied? Are they happy with that, what they are doing, and knowing that there's resources out there like yours and books, of course, readings that can help you to do that and achieve, that happiness, that satisfaction that I can see in your faces, in your expressions, and that is, very, very desirable. So we have a couple of we have 1 minute to make a final round of conclusions. I will start with Rhonda, and Rhonda, could you also answer a little bit on the opportunities that are coming up for programs that are opening, or options for people that are interested?
You bet. Thank you. Yes. So for anyone out there who's feeling any of the things that both Hugo and Carlos talked about, those feelings of there has to be more, or something's not right, or I want to figure out my purpose, we call those smoldering discontent. So if you're feeling any of those, you're going to get an email after this webinar, and there will be a link, and you can directly contact me. I'd love to have a conversation with you and help you figure some of this out. But we have the one-on-one coaching all the time. We have 4 cohorts of fellows starting every year. We have another one starting in the first quarter of next year. So we constantly have these programs. The Dream Together program for couples, we have 4 of those coming up next year as well. So it's constantly coming. We have programs to fit every person, because every person's so unique.
Excellent. Carlos, would you like to share as a final comment?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to recognize that you're in halftime. If you're watching this, then probably you are, and just dive into it. It is going to be a nice experience, and I'm going to put here on the chat a website. You can reach me, phone, email, or social media, and happy to talk to you a little bit more about it.
Excellent. And Hugo?
Yes, my final thought would be the midlife crisis is painful. It's painful, but it's a blessing. I mean, don't try to walk around it. I mean, as adolescents in life, this is a stage in life. I mean, we need to go through it to keep growing and to become the individual that we want to become. And also, if any of the audience has a question, they can write me at Twitter at Hugo Cuestal, @ Hugo Cuestal. They can write me, and I'll be glad to share any thoughts.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I just want to say to our participants that this webinar will be re-streamed in our website, LatinoLeaders.com, and we will be promoting it and announcing the times in our newsletter. And you can also log into the webpage and see other webinars there. But this one will live in our website, and also will live in our YouTube channel, so you can see it anytime you want. I want to say this has been a very powerful and invigorating conversation with these 3 leaders. Thank you, Rhonda, for bringing us the opportunity to collaborate with the Halftime Institute and Latino Leaders. Thank you, Carlos and Hugo, for sharing your experiences. I know many of these experiences are not easy to share, but I see the satisfaction in your faces, and I see the experience that you want to share, and why do you want to do it. So thank you again for that. And for Latino Leaders, it has been a privilege to partner with Halftime Institute and with having these magnificent panelists. So thank you very much. Have a great Friday, and happy holidays to everybody.
Gracias.
Hasta luego.
Bye. Thank you very much.